Running any business is a challenge, yet Easy Street Records in the West Seattle Junction has not just survived, it's thrived. Through all the changes in the music business, from vinyl, cassettes, CDs, and beyond, it's been a reliable source for hard-to-find music, good suggestions, and over time even great cafe food and cocktails. They even buy your old records. Easy Street has come to be the center of most things in West Seattle, from shared joy to shared sorrow. Guiding it has been the remarkable Matt Vaughan, whose steady hand and clear compassion is known to both regulars and rock stars. We spoke to Matt about his history and what Easy Street is all about. How does a record store that sells the physical medium, the vinyl, the cassettes, the CDs, survive in a world where everybody's streaming things to their phone? It's the instant gratification. I mean, it's the two opposing worlds. How do you survive?
And there's two ways to survive. Either you can be a destination or you can be a warehouse. And your record store can turn into a mail order / online marketplace place.
And they're out there.
They're out there. They're out there in this city. You know, you might go into stores and you wonder, God, how do they afford the rent here? Well, they got 3 people in back churning out packages, and the best customer is the UPS man. Why we are still here after all these years, 34 years on that corner, has a lot to do with so many families living here.
Yes.
Young people growing up through Easy Street, then they have families. It's a safe place for kids to come. There's not a lot of safe places out on the street, you know.
How does a record store survive in the world of streaming? How do you do it? By making it a destination. What makes it a destination?
In Easy Street's case, it's West Seattle.
Is it?
And it's that location. You know, it's pretty poetic to have and there's a sense of duty having a corner location, especially in a building like that, on the crossroads like that. You know, I was inspired by folks like David Bowie or Johnny Cash, Prince, Curtis Mayfield. You know, people that could innovate throughout their career, and in a way, I feel as though I have to do that as a small businessman.
So have you reinvented yourself over time, and has Easy Street reinvented itself?
Well, we've gone from being a vinyl store to a cassette and CD store to back to a vinyl store, exactly. A cafe,
yes,
a bar, a performance place. My mom would take my sister and I to the shows that she was promoting.
Oh, wow.
The bands of the songs that she was promoting. For example, The Who Comes Into Town, 1978. That was my favorite band. She takes my sister and I, and that was a game changer for me. That was a phenomenal. I mean, back then they were in the Guinness Book of World Records as the loudest band in the world. And my mom and her friend are just sitting up in the rafters and let me roam around by myself. And
wow, that's your most memorable.
The moment I remember the most from that particular show, it wasn't the splits that Pete Townsend was doing, or Keith Moon, you know, knocking over his drum set for the 3rd time. Yeah. It was these 2 kids older handed me a joint, and I'm 10 years old. Oh, and I look back at my mom, and she just starts laughing. She's like, no. It was her emotion with music and her desire to turn people on to the songs which she was working. Her claim to fame was she was the first person, man or woman, to get Bob Marley on commercial radio, and happened here at KJR.
Is that right?
Rostamon Vibration. Yeah.
Wow.
I say that the store opened in 1988 because that's when I kind of officially took it over. The lease was in my name. But there was 6 months or to a year where no one really knew who was manning the store, who owned the store. Did Willie still own it? Any of the guys that were working for Willie, were they involved? No one really knew. And it appeared as though it was going to take the fate of so many other record shops. CDs were $18.99, if you remember.
I do.
Dire Straits, Sade, Terrence Trent D'Arby. I mean, these were $18.99 CDs, and on top of that, you had to reformat your store, or figure out a way to get them into your record bins. Right. So a lot of the old timers, they'd already gone through 8 tracks, vinyl, of course. If they were into video, it was laser discs and VHS, Betamax, all this. So many different formats. They kind of threw their hands up, like, "Hey, I've had a nice run. I'm out." They weren't buying into this new format again that the record companies were.
But vinyl was still selling at that time.
Well, it was it was. Yeah, but it was soon to be at 0.001% of the market. We just shortly after that. Yeah, it never officially died. It rose its hand out of the dirt. So opened it there in '89, predominantly CDs with a wall of cassettes. Now cassettes sold as well as CDs for me for a number of years. A lot of staff that I have currently, they were kids coming in buying their first cassettes. A lot of that's because of all the high schools around, and the cars, and the boom boxes, and Absolutely. So with all the young people around, we sold a lot of cassettes, especially hip hop, R&B.
You couldn't hear on the radio.
Yeah, cassette singles.
Right.
But yeah, vinyl still was important to me. It was a passion for me. I was still a crate digger. I was still out junking around. I was still buying records at estate sales and garage sales. And
when did you start buying records? When did Easy Street begin buying records?
Penny Lane had a pretty good following with that.
Really?
Yeah.
It was all the way back to then.
Yeah.
I know that.
Yeah. If you remember, a lot of old timers might recall, right at the front door there was just a trough of it was like a bird feeder, really, for all the vinyl heads, and everything was under $5 for the most part. People were giving away their records to get CDs.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so that's around the time when I started the CD Club, which is still 34 years strong. Where and the card, I think, looks the same as it ever has.
That's amazing.
And bring your records in, trade them for CDs, get your stamps, get half stamps for used, and that's how I was able to gain enough revenue to get into the CD game and actually purchase new CDs. They were costing me $10 a pop.
Oh, yeah. You bet.
And I didn't have the market share or the relationships yet to get any kind of discounts. But before I knew it, I had a basement full of vinyl, and I had maybe 3 bins upstairs of vinyl. And the main people that were purchasing were, the vinyl heads that have always been around, but also a lot of the young DJs and hip hop kids. And so we kind of became a crate digging palace for a lot of them. And then you could get by appointment, you could go down in the basement. It was a free for all, and it was just records stacked everywhere. Nothing was in order.
Oh wow.
I'd walk through hell with a bucket of gasoline for any member of Pearl Jam, or for that matter, Soundgarden and Alice in Chains.
How did you get to be close friends with those guys? What do they mean to you?
Well, I've always lived in Seattle. Is part of it.
Yeah.
Don't have too many enemies. There's a bit of trust that goes back and forth.
Yeah.
Supported them from the beginning. In some cases, before they were signed. Back when they were consigning records, Head and Heart is a good example. Macklemore is a great example of bands that needed a bit of a handout or even advice. Every year, there's I find new bands and new artists that I fall in love with, and that hasn't waned at all. So
really?
Anyone that would say that we're just the glory days are behind us when it comes to music, then they're just too old. They're not listening to Phoebe Bridgers. They're not listening to Steve Lacy, Fontaines. Today, the new R&B and soul that's out there is on par with anything we've ever seen. And I think if you blink, you might miss it, because it's all happening right now, and you have and predominantly female driven, with artists like SZA and Jasmine Sullivan and Georgia Smith, and there's so many.
Tell me about the experience of Black Lives Matter, the day that it had the demonstration in West Seattle. It was remarkable for a number of reasons. It was peaceful. It was deeply emotional. It was very moving to me to see those people lay down on the street. And these people meant it and still mean it. And I'm glad they did. I'm glad they feel that way. It's the way it should have been all along. No bombs, no fires. Just show me how you really feel and be there. But it culminated out in front of Easy Street, where your place became sort of the emotional beating heart of that whole experience.
Yeah, that is one of the most special moments that's ever occurred outside and inside our doors, for sure. I was inspired by some postings that I was seeing online with some kids just talking that were looking to march and protest what had recently happened with the tragedy of George Floyd and all that was happening around that time, and Breonna Taylor, of course, too.
Of course.
And one thing that I saw was that it said, we're hoping to end the march in front of Easy Street in the middle of the junction. I was like, whew, wait a second now. We all believe in peaceful protest, but we've seen over the years, and we saw it here.
Capitol Hill with the CHOP and all of the...
And all through downtown, yes. And so there was reason for pause. The more I stayed on task with what they were talking about and following their feed, I was able to get in touch with a parent that was of one of the kids, and I said, "Hey, let's meet up."
You did.
And so we the parent and I met up at the shop and discussed how we can make this peaceful, ensure that it's peaceful. We know what their intent is, but this can go another way, and we've seen it go another way, and we only had 48 hours. He was on board with me to ensure that it was going to be safe. How we were going to do that, I said, well, let me call Dow, let him know what's about ready to happen.
Dow Constantine, King County Executive.
And Dow met up with me the next morning, and I said, hey, we need security but we don't need force. He's like, I'm all on board.
Did he?
I said, we're going to need, he said, we're going to need staging. We're going to need some guest speakers. And he implored me to run with it. You know, he certainly has other things at hand, but he was very much in touch with me about it all. And I said, well, I'd like to have Donald Watts and Aaron Jones, and they're both on board. And we have a girl named Erica who's never spoken in front of a large group, but she is from the Vaughan School, and she's going to be reading a poem. And there was a handful of others as well, but you know, those were our headliners. To our surprise, there was, you know, what, 5,000 people or so that came through the junction that day.
You bet.
And was arguably the most peaceful march and protest that King County saw throughout that entire time. No surprise that we've been so taken by so many female artists over the last few years. And I think it's because we're in this emotive state of being as people. And I don't know if it's maternal or big sister or whatever it might be, but overall it's honesty, it's authenticity. You know, we're coming off a period where, and I can't say we're coming off of it, but we're coming through a period that is one of serious consternation, and one that has got us all looking inside. We need confidence as a people.
That women's voices can lead us that way?
I feel that that's what's happening, yes. Yeah. Mother Teresa is leading the band, yeah. I won't be surprised again if our top 5 sellers have at least 3 or 4 women in the band or leading the band or solo artists themselves. That's what happened last year with the
So how does that tie in?